So yeah, you're definitely not going to agree with everything on this list. And that's what I'm counting on. You may not like my opinions, but they are correct. I'm Gage with 5-star, and before I get into my top 10 quarterbacks of all time, let's rapid fire some guys that didn't make the cut. Favre, habitual interception machine in the postseason, notorious welfare thief, and his seasons were more bipolar than Charlie Sheen. I'd take Ben over him any day. Elway. He basically went a decade with mass stats and didn't actually start producing until he had a packed team behind him. This doesn't really matter, but here's a fun fact. Statistically, Kirk Cousins is a better quarterback than John Elway, in almost every single category. In particular, his career completion percentage of 56.9 is comparable to Zach motherfucking Wilson. No pun intended. Not arguing he isn't an all-time great, we can call him top 15. Unitas, great quarterback who also played 70 years ago. I'm not a guy who thinks that everyone from a previous generation couldn't adapt to the modern game. Far from it, actually. But let me put this into perspective, though. When Unitas went to the Colts, computer mice had not been invented yet. I mean, of course I'm going to put Ben on this list, right? I'm a Steeler fan. Wrong. Especially if you know my previous comments about Ben. This guy was simultaneously a great player and better than the sum of his parts, if that makes sense. Outside of occasionally relapsing with back-breaking interceptions a la Favre, the guy was just money when it counted. He was just one of those guys that maybe he sucked for 3 quarters, but you know that if it was 17-17 going into the 4th, you were pretty comfortable with Ben. Guy also had a t-shirt cannon for an arm up until an injury that tore 3 of his flexor tendons completely off the bone, which essentially ended his career, and then we had to deal with him Tom Bradying people to death for like 3 years. Pretty horrible to watch, to be honest, but let's not forget about what an epic gunslinger this man was in his prime. One of only 10 quarterbacks in the history of the NFL to throw for 5,000 yards in a season. 2 Super Bowls, 3 appearances, a career record of 26-2-1 against the Brownies, and a partridge in a pear tree. Okay, so this may sound ridiculous at face value. Kurt had a total of 4 full NFL seasons. And in those 4 seasons, 2 of them were Super Bowl appearances with 1 Super Bowl victory, an NFL MVP, and he was a legitimately good postseason quarterback with a record of 9-4. And he had something like over 30 touchdowns and half as many picks in the postseason, which is really hard to do.
The greatest show on turf is #1 offense of all time.
The guy went from stocking shelves to winning MVPs in the same season. Good for him. Good old Steve Young, the sneaky athletic, white, lefty quarterback who actually replaced Joe Montana and put up better stats than he did somehow. I don't know if that's a testament to his greatness or a testament to Bill Walsh's system that the NFL still hadn't really caught up to. Although it's fair to speculate that had Steve got his chance earlier, maybe he would have had more of a chance at the GOAT case. I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of hard to rank him above Montana whenever you see his body of work compared to Montana's, but to call him one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time is by no means a stretch. Dan Marino is maybe the best pure passer the NFL has ever seen. I think it's more than fair to criticize him for the fact that he doesn't have a Super Bowl on his resume. But I think it's also fair to say that his teams relied on him to win pretty much 100% of the time. I mean, he had receivers that dropped passes constantly. He almost never had a good run game. His defenses were almost always dog shit, and it seems like he would go down 21-0 in the playoffs before he could even blink. It was kind of like Ben Roethlisberger's last couple years in the postseason, where all of a sudden it's 21-0, 28-0 in the first quarter, and you're just like, what more is there to do? And yet, despite all of that garbage he had to work with, Dan Marino has still carved out a legacy as inarguably one of the greatest of all time. You know that phrase that old football heads love to say about how they can throw the football through a car wash and not get it wet? Dan Marino's who they're talking about. Aaron Rodgers, the hippie, Scientologist, immunizer himself. Aaron Rodgers is a rumored Scientologist. I believe it. Look into this man's eyes. He may spend as much time with Alex Jones as he does teammates nowadays, but you can't deny what a great player he is. Aaron Rodgers is, at worst, a very good quarterback, and at his best, the best quarterback you'll ever watch. Guy has a cannon for an arm and can drop it into a bucket 60 yards away. Editor me in the future, please put the clip of Hail Mary Aaron Rodgers. Thank you. And outside of conveniently having overinflated footballs in the Super Bowl he played against the Steelers, he really doesn't have any marks on his resume, at least on the field.
If Aaron Rodgers came to me right now and said, Shannon, don't go outside, the sky's falling, I'm a dead mofo because the sky gonna drop on my head. because I don't believe anything he says.
Good old Broadway Joe. That's not who that's for. While it's true that Joe Montana heavily benefited from Bill Walsh's West Coast system that the rest of the NFL just hadn't caught up to yet, which a lot of times kept him protected and kept him getting easy looks over and over again, put whatever asterisks on it you want, winning 4 Super Bowls and constantly being the top team in the NFL was pretty hard to argue with. He's my number 5 quarterback of all time, he's one of the best postseason quarterbacks of all time, and he's a guy that wasn't an alien. I mean, he was a capable scrambler, but I love that he was able to get it done from within the pocket. He has a career and stats that command respect, even, 30 years later. Statistically, Drew Brees is a guy you could argue is the GOAT. Putting him at number 4 may be a bit high for some, but let's remember that there's only one guy in NFL history that's topped him in pretty much any of his quarterback marks. Is Drew Brees a volume merchant? A little bit. But to say that he made the Saints relevant for pretty much 20 goddamn years is factual. I mean, look at the Saints now. Are they even still a football team? Do the Saints even exist anymore? Do you know? Do I know? Does anyone know? So first of all, do I have to list the pros? I mean, it's Tom Brady. If you want to hear people talk about every single accolade he's ever had, there's about 1 million videos on YouTube of it. So let's discuss why I didn't put him at number 1. For one, there isn't a single quarterback in NFL history with more cheating scandals than Tom Brady. Not one. Not a single one throughout the 100+ year history of this game. No quarterback has had more controversy throughout the course of their career than Tom Brady. No quarterback has benefited more from baloney calls, especially in clutch moments, than Tom Brady. There's also nobody that benefits from circumstance like Tom Brady. Spygate, COVID Bowl, Malcolm Butler, Julian Edelman, 28-3. I can keep going and going and going. I feel like a lot of times teams would just completely fall apart at like the mythos of Tom Brady and would just sit back and cover 4 and would let him complete these wide open checkdowns underneath, and it drove me to distraction. Also, I'm looking at you, Mike Tomlin. Like, I don't know, man. Was Tom Brady great? Yes. Was he an excellent, efficient pocket quarterback? Yes. But I mean, man, have you ever seen the guy throw a deep ball? It's pretty bad. I just want everybody to look at these throws. Do me a favor and just watch these throws. I mean, only the greatest quarterback to ever play football could do this. Just the 45-year-old on HGH. Just him. Putting Manning at 2 was something that I thought a lot about, but A, he has a career winning percentage against Tom Brady. B, I actually think you can argue Brady has more worse postseason performances than Peyton Manning does, which is the part of the season that everyone said Manning was the worst at. And number 3, and maybe the most important, he had to carry his teams the vast majority of his career. Tom Brady never had a bad offensive line, and had a top 10 defense almost every year of his career. Peyton Manning had a top defense, I think 4 times his whole career, and won the Super Bowl 2 of those years. Peyton was ranked as the number 1 quarterback in the league for probably, I would say, 2/3 of his NFL career. Also, not to mention, nobody has him beaten MVPs, and I kind of doubt anybody will except for another guy that you'll hear here in a second. But overall, playing against Peyton Manning was kind of like playing against a head coach who can also destroy you with his arm. He knew how to diagnose your defense, he knew exactly how to adjust his offense accordingly. He was basically the king of audibles. And to me, there's only one guy in NFL history better than him. Heresy! You can't put Patrick Mahomes at number 1. You can't do that. Quiet you. This is my list. The guy feels like a different life form sent here to play quarterback. I mean, can he win with alien-like throws off-platform across his body 50 yards downfield in the drop of a bucket? Sure. Can he also stand and dice you from inside the pocket? Yes. Well, can he run the bootleg game? Yep. Well, what about his football IQ? Well, he's about as smart as they come. But there's just nothing in Mahomes' game that you can actively exploit. And the weird thing is, he's only getting better. He's been able to adapt to the NFL of this cover 2 epidemic, like, better than maybe any other gunslinger that we've seen. We see over and over again with these kind of guys that they'll continue to do what they think is going to work, and it results in pick after pick after pick. And yet Mahomes is adaptable and moldable, stays young, and stays learning. All the meanwhile being arguably the best athlete the quarterback position has ever seen. They're looking to three-peat, and to be honest, if any team in NFL history was going to do it, it wouldn't be the 76 Steelers. it wouldn't be some remnant of the '85 Bears. It would probably be a team led by this man, Patrick Mahomes II.